Greetings and salutations. This is the voice of Loquacious of Herd, bringing you his afterthoughts to the Season 6 finale of My Little Pony Friendship is Magic, titled To Where and Back Again. I heartily suggest you find and watch the episode itself, sans commentary, before proceeding with either this Afterthoughts review or viewing my full reaction, which is hosted at the link in the description. Be warned, this Afterthoughts review will contain spoilers for the episode. With that out of the way, on to the review. As with the end of any season of this delightful show, I would have to classify my feelings as bittersweet. It was a good season, filled with humor and adventure and much tugging on the heartstrings. I am glad to have seen it, sad that it's now over, but eager to rewatch many of its lovely episodes while waiting for the new season to dawn. And this finale, To Where and Back Again, did an excellent job of making that transition. First, as I mentioned in my reaction, the title of this episode is drawn from J.R.R. Tolkien's children's fantasy story, The Hobbit, a book with the subtitle There and Back Again. Throwing in a reference to that delightful epic certainly set my expectations fairly high. I was not disappointed. I don't recall seeing the mountain and cloud motif on Twilight's walls before. I find myself wondering if these misty mountains are also a reference to The Hobbit. Far over the misty mountains cold, to dungeons deep and caverns old, we must away ere break of day, to seek our long-forgotten gold. Regardless, we almost immediately get a reference to Superman, with Twilight and Starlight's rendition of "It's a bird, it's a," well, parasprite rather than plane, and it is indeed a super mare making a crash landing, specifically Derby, delivering mail. While we've seen her as a male mare before, this is the sort of fan-pandering I can get behind. Also, as a fun note, usually when a cartoon character has a huge crash, they wind up all derp-eyed for a moment or two. But after Derpy's big crash, her eyes are underped for a few seconds. And it turns out the mail delivery is for Starlight rather than Twilight. I liked the way Derpy held onto the letter when Twilight tried to take it, shook her blonde head, and then turned to give it to Starlight. It felt like a visual nudge to indicate that while we see Twilight right from the get-go in this episode, the story that is to unfurl is shifting its focus from Twilight to her pupil, which also lines up nicely with Twilight's earlier comment about the need to reorganize the library so as to keep the new books, the new stories, the new characters, front and center. As for the letter, oh, what a terrible thing has happened. The ponies of Starlight's old village have invited her to an unexpected party. While this shouldn't be a big deal, and in the ordinary course of events should be a cause for joy, Starlight has issues. The big ones are that she knows she was a villain, and while she is committed to her reform, in part due to the nature of her particular brand of villainy, she also fears that others may not be as forgiving as Twilight and her friends. Sure, we got a brief montage of Starlight returning to our town, the Equality Village, back at the end of Season 5, and it seemed that her apology went over well then. But it also seems that since then, she's not really had much, if any, contact with the old, brainwashed and oppressed minions? We return from the credits and straight into a dream sequence, which captures Starlight's fear that such forgiveness as we had seen might not be all that deep or genuine, that ponies might still hold quite a few justified grudges and ill feeling towards her. Luna puts in a welcome appearance and offers valuable advice, namely to talk to their mutual friends, the main six, about these fears. To this advice, Luna adds a piece of encouragement that Starlight definitely needed to hear. From one reformed villain to another, the princess who had been Nightmare Moon tells the once broken pony that, speaking from personal experience, it gets better. The old emotional wounds that come from having done bad things do heal. Forgiveness and friendship can smooth the way to a better future. Also, I like that poster on Starlight's wall. It's some sort of moth or butterfly image, very pretty, but is it possibly foreshadowing? Only time will tell. Well, time and me. Spoiler alert, I'm thinking time says yes, that's foreshadowing, a real Chekhov's gun sort of thing. Nice and pretty bugs will be important in the near future. Meanwhile, Starlight takes the good advice of Luna and consults with their friends. They too offer encouragement and support. And so Starlight speaks of one of her great fears, that she might not be as reformed as she believes and wants herself to be. quite understandable. She was mentally and emotionally broken, but turned from that path to begin healing. She's gotten better, lots better. But having been broken before, she naturally fears becoming broken, becoming wicked again. And having not even realized she was evil back in her broken days, she also fears that her judgments about herself, particularly when she is judging herself to be a good and decent pony, cannot be fully trusted. But good friends and the faith they have in you can help with that, and they can provide support when going into a situation where a pony like Starlight may find herself dealing with old wounds, old traumas, and old guilt. So at Twilight's suggestion, Starlight goes on to the festival with a dear friend. Just not the dear friend Twilight had in mind when making that suggestion. Kind of the exact opposite of what Twilight had intended. I rather like the dynamic between Starlight, Twilight, and Trixie. It seems to address an issue that hasn't gotten a lot of attention in the show, namely that it's quite possible to have good circles of friends where each circle, or members in it, don't overlap, where one group of friends is at least a little hostile to another group of friends. And this situation, too common in real life, is something that folks can strive to deal with in a mature and respectful way. It's okay for folks to have different groups of friends, after all. So, off with Starlight and Trixie to the festival. After a bit of Trixie rubbing in the whole "once again Starlight chooses me as her best friend over you" thing for the slightly twitchy-eyed Twilight. Starlight's fears are front and center, and kudos to Trixie, our favorite show pony is right there by Starlight's side, providing emotional support. Into town, where Double Diamond, Party Favor, Sugar Belle, and Night Glider are all extra excited to see their old friend and, over-lady, Starlight. Oh, it's clear they're all well past the whole lingering grudges thing. Instead, the locals are still struggling with autonomy. Understandable, really. Dear leader Starlight ran everything back in the day. I imagine they've gone to a consensus model for local governance now, and any pony who tried to step up as a true leader would likely have gotten more than a few suspicious looks. Alas, consensus is a slow and messy process, which means there are all sorts of little details for the festival that are still kinda sorta being hammered out. Nothing major enough to actually put a serious dampener on the festivities, but with their friend Starlight, the super organizer, back in town, why, every pony here trusts her to make the right decisions for them all, from which banner to hang, to cupcake judging, and everything in between. Fear 1, that Starlight would be rejected. Well, that's a non-issue. But that still leaves Starlight's other great fear, that she herself isn't fit for leadership, that she might misuse any position of power or authority given her. Her reasonably recent slip-up in using compulsion magic on the main 5 so as to complete a series of Twilight's friendship lessons in an expeditious manner has likely only strengthened that fear. And here she is, in the place of one of her greatest crimes, being asked to take up a leadership role, when everything she sees and hears is only drilling home a point that she fears may be true, that she doesn't deserve to lead, and if she tries to lead, what horrors might result. Yeah, I totally get Starlight's breakdown, a breakdown where she pushes every pony away with magic and tries to hide. Every pony but Trixie, that is. It's a little subtle thing, but I love how only Trixie isn't forced back by Starlight's burst of magic. Even when panicking, Starlight recognizes Trixie as a true friend, some pony with Starlight's best interests at heart, some pony safe. And, more kudos to Trixie, recognizing that Starlight has just freaked out and shut down, Trixie steps up with a spiel to direct attention to Trixie herself, perhaps so any unhappiness about being blasted away by unicorn magic might settle on the visiting illusionist rather than Starlight. And then Trixie steals Starlight away in a puff of smoke. That Trixie conceals Starlight under her cloak while they run is rather sweet. Too unsettled to even go back to try to explain, Starlight gives up and heads home. And along the way, Starlight speaks of how she had been ready for suspicion and blame. Forgiveness was unsettling, but to be asked to lead them again? That triggered one of Starlight's greatest remaining fears and insecurities. This is a lesson Starlight needs to learn. Specifically, she needs to learn to trust herself again, to trust that she is the good pony she believes herself to be, and that she wants to be. That she's no longer a villain, but a heroine. Some pony to be trusted with power and responsibility. Given what all Starlight went through, her journey of reformation, I find it quite understandable that this is a lesson that comes hard to her. Trixie listens, and like a good friend, offers yet more support by reassuring Starlight that every pony makes mistakes. Why, Trixie even admits something she wouldn't ordinarily tell a soul, that Trixie herself has made mistakes. Her subsequent opinion that a pony should just move on with their lives and pretend said mistakes never happened is, as Starlight comments, almost good advice. When speaking of theatrical productions, pretend it's not a mistake is actually some of the best advice for handling the occasional on-stage slip-up. Most of the audience won't notice the error. Less so when it comes to other life situations, though, so let's call Trixie half right. Back to Ponyville early. Hello, Pinkie Pie! And there it is. Something's off. Something's way off, way wrong. Pinkie Pie is almost acting like Pinkie. She's not the only one. All of the main six, and Spike too, are acting oddly. There's unusual gaps in their understanding of things, their memories, and there's a cruel, arrogant edge to their interactions with Starlight and Trixie. Trixie doesn't really notice anything different about them, but I find this more a commentary on Trixie's own pony point of view. She may well see the main six in a far less favorable light than we do, so that the casual cruelties, insensitivity, and arrogance displayed by them would likely fit the pattern Trixie rather expects. Starlight, however, can already tell something's up, so off to consult with her mentor. Time for another reference. When Starlight finds the door to Twilight's castle locked, and since when has Twilight ever kept that door locked? Spike answers the door in true Wizard of Oz style. Apparently, orders are nobody can see the great Twilight, not nobody, not no how. Twilight answers the door, though, and sends Spike away. And another lovely, subtle touch, the narrowing of Twilight's eyes as she makes reference to this Spike having missed a meal. In retrospect, that's more than a little disturbing. Twilight's advice to the worried Starlight is utterly unlike what Twilight would actually say, a far cry from her earlier praise that Starlight is the one responsible for the good pony Starlight has become. And then this un-Twilight is off to a secret friendship council meeting from which Starlight is excluded. By now I strongly suspected what was really going on. We've had hints of this season's big villain since the premiere, after all. Upstairs for Starlight, who is clearly thinking something's very, very wrong here in the friendship capital of the world. To sleep, perchance to dream. And in this dream, Starlight confronts the problem that's bothering her. The main six aren't acting like themselves. Indeed, as Luna's voice joins Starlight, it has become clear something's wrong. Luna's communication with Starlight gave me chills, and the reveal was exactly what I had come to expect. The Changelings had returned. They had pony-napped and replaced Celestia and Luna. Starlight was going to have to find help and restore the rightful rulers of the land. Starlight awakens. Yes, indeed, they're back. Off she goes to get help from her good friend Trixie. Now, as some of my gentle viewers know, I'm no fan of the Equestria Girls movies. But even I could give a grudgingly approving nod to the whole peanut butter cracker illusion half-dreaming Trixie dropped. Well done. And please stop referencing those cinematic horrors in the show itself. No? Ah, well, it's but a little annoyance to me. Trixie's brilliantly written, sleepy, generally unenthused about Starlight's other friends, and annoyed to be woken only to be grilled on an earlier admission, which she had asked Starlight never to tell anybody else. But it makes for a good password, as the Changelings are back. Good for Trixie. While she may view Twilight as a rival, and some ponies she doesn't really like all that much, when a real menace rears its ugly head, Trixie's first thought is we need to get Twilight. She can handle this. Only Starlight suspects it's too late for that. One eavesdropping session later, and those fears are confirmed. All of the main six and Spike have been stolen away, replaced by changelings. Why, Applejack Changeling is happily munching pears in the throne room. What sacrilege is this? They learn Celestia and Luna have been taken as well, and changelings are subverting all of Equestria. I also love the invisibility spell Starlight used to conceal herself and Trixie when the local imposters overheard the two eavesdropping unicorns and came to investigate. Shades of Bilbo Baggins and the Ring, or of Harry Potter and the Cloak. Well done regardless. Then, in a nice parallel from Starlight's earlier meltdown in Our Little Village, Starlight is the one to magically evac her friend when Trixie goes into total meltdown and freak-out mode due to the whole changeling thing. They gather at Trixie's wagon to figure out what to do next. Really, the only hope seems to be to make it to the Crystal Empire and get the help of the last one, well, technically two, free alicorns. Oh, hello, Thorax. How nice to see him show up. Is it the real Thorax? Yes, Starlight is clever enough to check. And Starlight's interruption of yet another inspiring Twilight speech struck me as an amusing callback to the cutie map. Alas, Thorax has come with very bad news. The Changelings have already replaced Cadence, Shining Armor, and Flurry Heart. Sunburst sent Thorax to get help from Twilight, but alas, he has clearly arrived too late. Also, an important point, Thorax has begun to change again. Not the sort of imitation changes that changelings are known for, but an unconscious metamorphosis of his true self. His wings have become crystalline, and have a significantly less ominous look to them than the usual tattered bug changeling wing pattern. Further, Thorax himself hasn't really noticed the change. It's just something that's happened over the past several weeks or months of his living as a friend to ponykind, sharing love rather than devouring it. Changelings, as Spike reminded us, change, and Thorax was actively seeking to find some way to live as a better creature, one that didn't need to steal love to survive. Given changeling mutability, it would seem that his devotion to a new path was already starting up some fundamental alterations in his body. Also, I speak of his changing again because even in his first appearance, Thorax's magic had already changed from the usual changeling green to a much bluer shade that matches his eyes. Anyway, so here we now have a gathering of three reformed villain types: Starlight, a changeling, and Trixie. These three unlikely heroes need to find a way to save the day. Alas, all the really high-powered folk have already been taken out by Chrysalis. All but one. Funny how it seems most every pony forgets about Discord, and his appearance completes the quartet of now good guy-ish once villains. I'm guessing they didn't try to add in Gilda for reasons of time. Still, we now have a true Suicide Squad-style gang of one-time bad guys and gals here to do good things and fight a greater evil. Discord proves who he is easily enough. No changeling can do his style of reality-warping chaos magic after all, even if they can mimic some of the easier magics, object moving and door opening, when disguised as a creature like a unicorn who can make use of such powers. To the news that most of the important ponies of Equestria had been snatched up, Discord is remarkably uninterested. Right up until he hears that Chrysalis has nabbed Twilight and her friends. Discord dropping into deadly serious mode is frightening. His "they took Fluttershy" immediately had me wondering how in the world the story was going to last another full episode. His subsequent "where" had me wondering if the whole changeling threat plot would even last for the rest of this episode. An angry Discord should be able to resolve the situation with a few snaps of his claws. And sure enough, he is on it. He teleports our intrepid group of heroes to Fluttershy. Well, at least Fluttershy was the intended destination. The actual point they reached was several miles from the lonely mountain that is Chrysalis's changeling hive, and this leaves us at to be continued. We return from the break to find Discord a bit bemused that his intended effect hadn't quite manifested in the way he wanted. Trixie bickering with Discord is terribly amusing. Starlight attempting to plan, a new concept to the master of improvisational chaos, is likewise enjoyable to see. And Thorax needs to speak up a bit more, given that he's the only creature there with a working knowledge of Chrysalis's hive. Turns out that Chrysalis has a throne carved from an ancient black stone which absorbs all non-changeling magic in a considerable radius. Add it to the list of other known major artifacts, the cutie map and the crystal heart, one of which, the heart, also has the whole absorba type of power functioning. Perhaps the two are related somehow. Also, one wonders if Chrysalis can repurpose the magic absorbed by her throne to accomplish powerful workings, in the same way that, say, the Crystal Ponies or Cadence can power up and fire off the heart. If so, that might help explain how Chrysalis both keeps her position of dominance over the hive, and how she has the power to challenge the rulers of Equestria. Admittedly, sneaking in changelings to jump some pony when they're asleep is a pretty good way to get around most of the defenses they would otherwise have. And given that powerful magic is a thing, I'm actually less surprised that Chrysalis has such an artifact at her disposal, and more surprised that other great villains and heroes don't. This is less a matter of plot convenience, although it is quite convenient to the current plot, and more a matter of securing your territory, after all. Regardless, the throne is one of the chief defenses of the hive, and even if it cannot be actively deployed to do nasty things, it serves to nicely counter not only Discord but also Starlight. Stripped of their ability to work real magic, they're down to their unaugmented minds and bodies to try to deal with the problem. And so, the two conflicts, the external and the internal, established for the finale, come into beautiful symmetry. The parallel issues are both the pony napping plot by the Changelings and Starlight's fear of being in charge of things. Some pony needs to lead this ragtag and rather nerfed band of do-gooders, and the only pony suited for that leadership role is Starlight herself. Starlight fears being in charge, but everyone else automatically looks to her as the leader. So where to next, fearless leader? Well, in theory, if the throne could be destroyed, then non-changeling magic could be used in and around the hive. Break the throne, and Discord can easily deal with the problems Chrysalis has caused. So that's the plan. Have fun storming the castle. Along the long trek to the hive, they come up with a delightful code phrase to use as an identifier. Again, Starlight showing off her clever thinking and her ability to plan. With Thorax's assistance, they find an unguarded entry and enter the ever-shifting changeling hive. Got to say, I love how the hive shifts and morphs, exactly like, as Thorax explains, its inhabitants. And Discord's grudging faint praise for the chaos involved serves to underline how confusing it would be for a non-changeling, or non-chaos spirit, to even try to navigate the place. Tempers are frayed, and Trixie and Discord's continual snapping at one another leads to Starlight putting her hoof down and reining in both of these strong-willed companions, getting them to focus on the mission at hand and on how they might contribute to it rather than on their banter. Again, Starlight steps into this needed leadership role naturally, and without really even realizing she's doing it. Then almost immediately she follows that up by speaking of her insecurity about so much as providing advice or leadership role in festival planning, much less heading up a rescue mission such as they were on. Indeed, without magic, the only one with real talents to put forth would seem to be Thorax and his one-time familiarity with this, his home hive. But alas, even with Thorax's prior exposure, this place has changed, and he has changed too. He finds himself lost, and the fellowship grinds to a halt. However, the resulting discussion is quite enlightening. When talk turns to Changeling's whole feeding on love thing, Thorax mentions that ever since making true friends, ever since he started giving love rather than just taking it, he's not been hungry. This is entirely different from how most changelings live. For most of them, life is a torment of never-ending hunger for love. They feed, which sustains them and lessens the hunger. The hunger remains and grows stronger again. Starlight starts to see something that Thorax hadn't yet. The link between his newfound use of the power of love, as something to be shared rather than something to be stolen, and the beginnings of a physical transformation, the wings, of course, but part of which is that the terrible hunger of the changelings is just gone. All of which is well and good, but it doesn't obviously move them closer to freeing Fluttershy, and Discord isn't exactly noted for his patience. His big mouth attracts trouble, and even he realizes that they need a plan to deal with it. Up steps Starlight once again, jumping on an offhand comment by Trixie. The illusionist's smoke bombs are deployed by Thorax in Trixie disguise. Between the bombs and his intuitive grasp of the caverns, he's able to leave the scout swarm a merry chase and then ditch them. It's a good thing they have their klutzy Draconicus code. It makes the subsequent reunion much less nerve-wracking, though Discord still disapproves of that particular phrase. Starlight continues to put together information, both from her own observations and from the others' knowledge and experience, building plans out of the barest bones. With two of the scout swarm having veered off from the chase, Thorax recalls that the standard operating procedure in the hive would be that some of the scouts would fall back to the throne room to protect the queen. Starlight's right. That's the way they should go. Starlight still isn't comfortable with the compliments on her good thinking. It's still too close to acknowledging her own leadership role. Next crisis, a door leading deeper into the more secure sections of the hive. A door guarded by quite a few elite changeling guards in their beetle-like armor. Actually, the armor also made me think a bit of the toothy maws of hydralisks or ultralisks. Anyway, to have any chance of sneaking by, there would need to be a big distraction. Discord effectively volunteers and sets off, armed with Trixie's microphone, which had been revealed earlier in one of Trixie and Discord's bantering sessions, making its use a wonderful bit of foreshadowing. Discord uses a stand-up comedy. It might not be super effective, but it was effective enough. With the guards distracted, the others sneak by, and Discord sets off at a gallop. Loved the running animation for Discord, and I also enjoyed the fact that as a creature of chaos, Discord was probably the one hero other than Thorax who could be sent off alone and still have a decent chance of finding his way back to the others. Alas, Discord walks into a trap set specifically for him, a false Fluttershy. Kudos to him for figuring it out, but then a whole swarm of false Fluttershies, and the carefully placed suggestion that he could never be entirely sure if the real one wasn't somehow concealed among them. Points to the changelings for their cruelty and playing up to their strengths. With that doubt in his mind, what could Discord do? Flee? He was already surrounded. Fight? If he did that, he might hurt the real Fluttershy. Oh, she probably wasn't there, but he couldn't be sure. We cut away from a stricken Discord, out-trolled and outmaneuvered by the Changeling swarm, shortly before a horde of Fluttershies doubtless jumped him. I was briefly reminded of The Hobbit, and how Thorin's company lost the aid of their most powerful ally Gandalf midway through their own quest. Meanwhile, back with the others, a Discord shows up, but it's a Discord who doesn't know the klutzy Draconequus passphrase. This Changeling Cord tries to lead them down one of two possible paths, and Thorax knows hive practices enough to know they're being led into a trap. They need to follow the other path, but how to do so and manage to ditch the false Discord. Extra especially, how to ditch the false Discord in a way that the Changeling can't alert a nearby swarm. Time is short, and Trixie earns major respect from me by stepping up to the challenge. She'll distract and delay, holding off the enemy while Starlight and Thorax flee. Starlight is near panic, but Trixie reassures her that Starlight, like it or not, is a good leader, and it will be her clever mind that will figure out a way forward. It's the best, indeed only choice. Starlight is the one who has a chance of finding a way to break the throne. Thorax is the one who can lead her through the hive. Trixie, well, she's here to do her part. And Trixie's current part is a sleight-of-hand trick to tie the false Discord to her. In the moment when Trixie, bound to a changeling by a series of handkerchiefs, yells, "Run!" I had a mental image of Gandalf, tied to a Balrog by a whip of fire, crying out, "Fly, you fools!" Sure, that image wasn't from The Hobbit, but it still seemed apropos. Trixie is lost to the abyss, and the swarm descends upon her. Her last words, "Ta-da!" Hats off to the show pony. That's some real heroics right there. I salute you. With a head start, but still pursued by the swarm, Thorax and Starlight split up. We see Starlight finally enter Queen Chrysalis's throne room, all alone. Loved the throne design. Loved how all the powerful ponies had been imprisoned and cocooned above it. And Chrysalis's emergence? That was a moment of creepy that pegged really, really high on the nope scale. Higher than 10 pounds of nope in a 5-pound bag. Possibly at Fluttershy covered in spiders levels of nope. Excellent job of reinforcing the whole "this creature is wrong and wicked" message. Chrysalis and her swarm easily capture Starlight, gluing her to the floor with changeling goo. Chrysalis is in full-on villain gloat mode, although the mention of the renegade Thorax angers her. But angering her and keeping the attention of her guard is what this Starlight is trying to do. Because, as Chrysalis soon realizes, this isn't Starlight. She's captured Thorax in a Starlight disguise. The real Starlight has taken advantage of this distraction to sneak past to the throne, and there, Starlight uses hit it with a rock? I think it would be an understatement to say that this wasn't very effective. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. Unicorn magic and physical strength have failed. That leaves only Starlight's native intelligence and the bound Thorax's changeling magic as ways to resolve this situation. Discord's earlier analysis of "we are doomed" seems all too prophetic. Starlight flees into the throne, and she keeps Chrysalis talking. If the villain's got a good gloat going on, then keep her monologuing. It's going to take something unorthodox to find a path to victory, something other than fighting a more powerful foe. That battle's already been lost, so listen to your enemy and perhaps they'll give you something you can use. Starlight's moment of realization and the solution was something I heartily approve of, something that has been foreshadowed since the times they are a changeling. All of this evil is happening in large part because it's how the changelings feed their unending hunger. But what if there was another way? Thorax found one. Sharing love is already changing him, and it has ended his hunger. The other changelings could do as he has done, and they wouldn't have to live lives of constant starvation. Starlight is in the perfect position, due to her own past, to speak to Chrysalis's despotic rule and beseech a change. Chrysalis is having none of it. But it wasn't just to Chrysalis that Starlight was speaking. She was speaking to Chrysalis's subjects. And from the way they responded to Starlight, it was clear that the average changelings in the hive were intrigued about the possibilities of a life free from hunger, especially with proof of Starlight's claims in the form of an obviously altered Thorax there before them. Chrysalis declares she will devour Thorax's love, reasserting her sole dominance over the swarm, and in so doing show them a real leader. Oddly, it will turn out Chrysalis will be right, but not in the manner she believed. Starlight realizes that in freely giving love, Thorax can both stand up to the evil queen, and in doing so, show his fellow changelings a better way. Again, in retrospect, this is a bittersweet moment. How can Thorax actually give all of his love to Chrysalis? Because she's his mother. She may be wicked, evil, and undeserving of kindness and love, but Thorax is a kind and loving creature, and giving his mother all that love was more than she could handle. It blasted her back to the throne and chipped it. Even more, this total immersion in a truly selfless moment of love for another, perhaps especially because it was a creature that didn't deserve his love, completed Thorax's metamorphosis. Thorax emerged from the resulting cocoon as a new creature, still an insectoid pony, but not a terrifying monster, a beautiful butterfly, dragonfly, or beetle-like beastie. He is revealed as a true leader, a hive lord for the changelings. You know, changelings have always been inspired by fairy lore, and, apart from the breezies, we've only ever seen dark changelings, wicked changelings, the unseelie court of fairy ponies. Here, now, we get our first look at a bright and beautiful fairy pony, a seelie lord of bug pony kind. We've effectively just seen the birth of Oberon. Starlight speaks up to the hive as a whole. If they choose to embrace Thorax's example, they too can escape the pain of their earlier existence and live a better life. One by one, the changelings of the hive undergo their own transformations. All changelings are adept with the use and transfer of love. They have to be to feed on it. And they're the best mimics around. Show them something once and they can replicate it. With Thorax as an example, each projects their own store of internalized, and one hopes not too digested, love, and uses that act of giving to kickstart their own transformations. This massive outpouring of changeling magic, of changeling love, in a way so different from that which the Black Throne has always been used under Chrysalis's rule, is too much for it. The throne explodes. In the aftermath, we see the results of the changeling's transformation. A seelie court lord, and now a seelie court of changeling ponies. I believe they're still changelings, for fairy glamour is a thing after all, but their core form is much improved from their earlier selves. Sure, it's toyetic, but it's the kind of toyetic I can get behind. Prisoners freed, the situation explained in brief, but then Chrysalis rising from the rubble. Queen Chrysalis is a badass. But given the assembly before her, there's no way she has a chance at fighting the heroes and heroines, especially without the magic absorption capabilities of the throne at her disposal. Arrayed against her are a baby dragon, 3 powerful unicorns, a warrior, a wizardess, and an entertainer, all of the elements of harmony, a changeling lord with his hive at his back, a demigod of chaos, and no less than 5 angry alicorns. Yes, gentle viewers, I'm counting Flurryheart in the list of combatants. Just take a look at that little baby pony. She's pissed and clearly ready to throw down with the best of them. Who will start this fight? Chrysalis is smart enough not to. If she does, she'll be crushed. Heck, even if 2/3 of the forces arrayed against her just kick back and munch on popcorn, it'll be a long evening of curb-stomping the evil queen. Of the gathered forces of good, Celestia is among the oldest and wisest. I suspect the others were waiting on her to kickstart the hostilities. As for Celestia, she takes her position, but then looks to Starlight. It's clear to me from Celestia's stance that she considers this Starlight's show. Starlight once again steps up, offering Chrysalis a path to redemption. It is an act of mercy and pity towards a beaten foe, and I felt moved by Starlight's plea. Of all the characters we know, she is in the perfect position to reach out to a defeated villain, especially one like Chrysalis. For a moment, it looks like it might even work. But it doesn't. Unrepentant, Chrysalis flees after swearing vengeance on Starlight Glimmer. "Starlight Glimmerses," Chrysalis effectively says, we hates it forever." I sense future shenanigans in Season 7 and beyond. I also approve of this plot development. Not all villains will be redeemed. Sombra was destroyed, Tyrek imprisoned, and now Chrysalis, offered a chance at a better life, has rejected it to cling to her old and evil ways. It is important, and deeply in character, for our heroines to try to save the Changeling Queen from herself, but it is also important, and deeply in character, for that first attempt to fail. If Chrysalis is ever brought around, it will not be this easy. As Chrysalis escaped, I found myself wondering a bit why none of the assembled powers really exerted themselves to stop her, but just let her go on her own path. Such a foul creature as Chrysalis deserves to be imprisoned or slain, after all, yes? But, hearkening back to the title reference, this whole scene is a very Tolkien thing to include. We may not feel any pity for Chrysalis, but, to paraphrase Gandalf the Grey, deserves death? I dare say Chrysalis does. Many that live deserve death, and some that die deserve life. Can you give it to them? Then do not be too eager to deal out death in the name of judgment, for even the very wise cannot see all ends. I have not much hope that Chrysalis can be cured before she dies, but there is a chance of it, and she is bound up in the fate of Equestria. My heart tells me she has some part to play yet, for good or ill, before the end, and when that comes, the pity of Starlight may rule the fate of many. Perhaps Chrysalis too has a role to play, a role that, in spite of her wicked intentions, will rebound to some greater good. A chance that, like her people, she may someday be redeemed. Her escape, then, is something I found believable, both in that she would run, and that the assembled powers would let her flee. Time now for rest, recovery, and parties. Thorax, as the Oberon-like Changeling King, will take up the leadership of his reformed people, and Celestia speaks of hopefully much improved relations between the two lands. The rest of the ponies will head back to Equestria, to the sunset celebration, at Starlight's suggestion. There, Starlight reveals to her old friends the reasons for her initial flight from their welcome, and it is clear that Starlight, in stepping up to lead a small fellowship against the Queen, has mastered one of her lingering fears and insecurities, that of being in charge again. She has undertaken a journey, a quest, which helped her to come to grips with her own role as a heroine. She has defeated her enemies not with force, but with cunning and mercy. She has saved her friends and returned for a party. On the whole, I think Tolkien would have approved of the shape of this story. We close with a bit of banter between Discord and Trixie, each of whom appears to me to have a substantially better opinion of one another than when they began their journey, even if neither seems inclined to openly admit it. Perhaps they'll even become true friends. Then again, perhaps pigs will fly. Again. With Discord around, who knows? One last thing before I close. In reflecting on the defeated Chrysalis, I find myself noting that while beaten and fled, she remains a threat. Of her changeling swarm, those at the home hive have shifted their allegiance and their bodies to join King Thorax. But what of all the changelings abroad? At bare minimum, there were 7 of her trusted agents in Ponyville, at least 2 in Canterlot. 3 others may have been exposed in the Crystal Empire. Who knows how many more there are out there that didn't join the newly formed Seelie Changelings? That's not even considering that Chrysalis could always breed more unseelie bug ponies. Yes, I strongly suspect that one of the backdrops of future seasons will be the ongoing Changeling Civil War. Chrysalis is also canny enough to know that she needs protection from the powerful magic of her foes. She based herself around a most potent protection from the interference of her enemies. With that protection gone, I expect her first order of business will be to find some other trinket to hide her or shield her from hostile magic. Then it's on to gather her forces so as to be able to strike against those who have stopped her. With such an undercurrent moving behind the scenes, I suspect Season 7, and beyond one hopes, may well have their moments of exciting adventure as our heroes and heroines deal with this old enemy, and possibly new ones as well. But those are tomorrow's stories. If you wish to see my full reaction to Season 6 finale of My Little Pony, Friendship is Magic, titled To Where and Back Again, the link, as I mentioned earlier, is in the description. Feel free to leave any comments or likes for that reaction here on this Afterthoughts review. And until next time, as always, kindly remember, y'all are awesome. Stay awesome.